Hello, BookTube. I saw a video the other day from Books with Sam. Not my Sam, but a BookTube channel called Books with Sam, where he did a video about the books that have consumed him. And he listed 5 of them. I'll leave a link to his video down below. It's really, really interesting. He listed 5 of them. He listed Independent People by Haldor Laxness, and that was interesting to see on its own. He listed The Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens, which has always been one of 2 Dickens, it and A Tale of Two Cities, that I actually kind of sort of liked. So hearing, again, this is the BookTube effect, hearing a BookTuber mention it and praise it like this tipped me even more towards reading it again. He mentioned Shuggybane by Douglas Stewart, said that it was really a real gut punch of a book. I totally agree. I reviewed Shuggybane and really, really enjoyed it. Might be time for a reread of that. Then he mentioned 2 things that surprised me. One was Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy, which has always struck me. I know that it was hugely popular and has stayed popular as a backlist, but it's always struck me as this maudlin, manipulative book. But Sam's praise for it was heartfelt, and that's all it takes to make me start to wonder. I don't know. Is it time to reread A Prince of Tides? I don't know. And the last one that he mentioned was fascinating. It was Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, the second gigantic book in his latest gigantic fantasy series. Which Books with Sam mentions that all of the table set, all of the exposition, most of the initial exposition has already been done now in the first book. And in the second book, you are free to pursue the plot lines and really dig into the characters. And I think I felt something like that when I read Words of Radiance. I think I remember thinking, well, this feels a little different. And that is probably why. I don't think I'm tempted to reread Words of Radiance. I really don't think I am. It certainly would be as an e-copy if I did. It wouldn't be as a gigantic 5-pound hardcover or anything like that. But nevertheless, that got me thinking. That list got me thinking of the books that have obsessed me, that have completely consumed me, the books that I have lived with and lived in for so long. And that started, of course, making me make a list. And I wanted to share that list with you. I could not make just 5 books. I could not do it. And I wanted to make on my list books that have directly consumed me. So not any kind of an editor or a translator, just them directly. And I had to split it into 3 categories: ancient, not so ancient, and relatively modern. It's not helpful at all. But for the ancients, of course, we would start with the histories of Herodotus, which don't get me wrong, the English language translation by Aubrey de Salincourt I absolutely love, and even the one by Tom Holland. But Herodotus on his own is just, he's amazingly good and interesting and fun. And then also there's the Roman poet Horace, particularly his satires and also his odes, that are just, they are endlessly revisitable. For me, they are bottomlessly revisitable. They are the sunshine and the clouds and the weather and the wind in the grass of a long, long vanished world. And pretty much exactly the person whose observations about that world I would want to be reading 2,000 years later. Then we have the histories and the annals by the Roman senator Tacitus. Totally different from either Herodotus or Horace. Tacitus, I think, very firmly looks forward, blindly, he didn't know what was coming, but very firmly looks forward to an entirely different conception of what history would be. I think his histories are just incredible. They are novelistically gripping. Then a totally different kind, I think, a totally different kind of history, but I think born from a very similar vision of what it is to write history, would be the history of Rome by Livy. That I just love. I lived in that history, in its minor incidents, major incidents, all the stuff that Livy does, the narrative stuff that he does that no translator has ever brought into English. Livy's, even the parts of his book, his enormous book that we have, are so big that he has usually been treated by, for instance, translators, as a quarry. We will go in with a sack, we will fill it with a few good stories, and we will bring those back out. And if you are raised on those stories, and every classicist is raised on those stories, then that's inevitably going to affect how you look at the work when it comes time for you to look at it in the whole that we have so far, the whole that we have remaining. And that's a shame, because that's not how Livy wrote it, and that's not how he intended it. We see this in other circumstances as well, that in ways that I don't like at all. You see this in a whole bunch of other authors, where their books are, the most obvious example would be Plutarch, where they're the book that they wrote to have one aesthetic cohesion is shattered and broken up into a whole bunch of independent stories. I love Livy when he is free of that. Then another example here would be Homer, specifically the Iliad, that is an unbelievable, talk about a world unto itself, just amazing, just raw and serrated and amazing. And then finally, getting away from raw and serrated, would be the Roman poet Ovid, who wrote my #1 favorite book, and whose command of the Latin language is almost supernatural. It's just incredible, the things that he can do at the height of his power, just linguistically, are amazing, quite apart from the incredible wealth of the imagination. That's the ancient world. I felt terrible leaving a whole bunch of people. I left Suetonius off, I left Plutarch off, I left Catullus off. But in terms of books where it has been an endless possession, where I have been consumed by them, we'll leave those and go to the not-so-ancient time period. And here we can deal with, for instance, a gigantic brick of a thing, The City of God by St. Augustine. Which, when it comes to St. Augustine, I know that I'm supposed to mention the Confessions, but The City of God has always done more for me. It is world building of an absolutely epic type that you have to go much further down on this list to encounter again. And it's also the drama that I find is so animating in The City of God is that, unlike in the Confessions, you have an incredibly powerful brain trying to make sense of morality. And in The City of God, you have that same incredibly powerful brain trying to make sense of literally everything, the whole universe, the moral reality of the universe, but also everything else. It's incredible to watch. I find it thrilling. I think I'm the only person I know currently alive who finds it thrilling, but I do. Then another gigantic work, the Orlando Furioso of Ariosto, a sprawling epic poem that has everything and all the world in it. It has humor, it has pathos, it has more world building. It is a fantasy world mapped on fantasy principles that are incredibly consistent throughout the whole poem. But boy, oh boy, is it enjoyable to read. And I have loved, there's a 2-volume Penguin translation of it that I have loved, and I would also recommend. I feel like I need to step in. I don't feel like I need to work hard to recommend Homer, but I feel like I need to step in with the Orlando Furioso, because otherwise, who's going to read it? Who's even going to think about reading it? Then some predictable things here. There's the Divine Comedy by Dante, which is, the raw outline of a Dante stand-in doppelganger who travels to hell and purgatory and then heaven in the Christian mythology, and meets all sorts of people, the dead ghosts of people who are in those places. There's so much more going on, though. The Commedia is, in a very serious way, also another attempt by one incredibly powerful artistic sensibility to make sense of the whole universe and everything in it, the whole cosmos, moral, physical, metaphysical. It works. Somehow it does. It's incredible. I think it works because of its sincerity. But then moving from the sublime to the ridiculous, we have the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Not entirely complete and meant to be just the world understood through stories in a way that again, like with some other books on this list, is misserved when it is chopped up and presented as, oh, here are some funny jokes, or here's a bawdy tale, or even a gory tale. Chaucer had other things in mind, bigger, deeper, more subtle things in mind. I would strongly recommend reading as much of the Canterbury Tales as you can, and reading it without that chopped up approach. But I'm not supposed to be recommending things. I'm supposed to be talking. I can't help it. When I talk about books, I immediately shift into recommending mode and how to recommend. But these are books that have consumed me. So we'll move on from the Canterbury Tales to The Praise of Folly by the Dutch humanist Erasmus. Which is also a book that transforms as it's going along, but it starts out as a take no prisoners excoriation of the stupidity, the cupidity, the shallowness of the church in Erasmus's day. Right? The book undergoes a transformation along its way, but it starts out that way in such excoriating tones that Erasmus had to spend a lot of his life denying that he even wrote it, knowing perfectly well no one knew books better than Erasmus. No one since Cicero knew books better than Erasmus. He knew perfectly well that his claim to immortality, which is the only, no matter what anybody says, it's the only reason why anybody writes and publishes anything. It's the only kind of immortality there is. And unless you kill a whole continent, it's the only kind of immortality there is. And writers are pretty sensitive to that. Erasmus had to know. By the time he died, he had to know that the thing he'd written, the thing from his pen that was most likely to be immortal, was The Praise of Folly. And yet he had to spend so much time distancing himself from it. But anyway, The Praise of Folly would be on here just because it's consumed me. I don't think it would consume a contemporary reader. I know we see statistics and studies that come out saying that the nones, N-O-N-E-S, the people who in response to surveys and questionnaires say, when asked what their religion is, say, none. I have no religion. I know we're told in stories that the percentage of nuns in most of the world has increased steadily, I think from 5% to 10%, 15% in the last generation or whatever. Those surveys are completely wrong. I should point out, most surveys are completely wrong. Those surveys are completely wrong. There's virtually no one in the world who is religious in the way that Erasmus would have understood it. Virtually no one. iPhones killed religion. But even the people who say yes, an enthusiastic yes, I am religious, still would probably not resonate with much of what's in The Praise of Folly. But I had to put it on here because it's consumed me. And then when we're talking about not quite ancient, that also would be the works of Shakespeare, which I've been hip deep in the works of Shakespeare for Shaktember this year. But I don't need much to send me back to some collected Shakespeare or other. I don't need much to just fall into those works and be consumed by them. Just be consumed by the sheer brilliance of them. So those are the not quite ancient. Those are the in-between modern and ancient authors. And then we'll do the relatively modern authors, and then I'll finish with whatever this video is. I have no idea what this video is. So in the relatively modern world, we can start with something very small, something that will take you an hour to read, A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Her meditation on what a woman needs in order to enter the realm of literature, in order to have a lottery ticket for that kind of immortality. She was commissioned to give a speech to a bunch of young female undergraduates who were going to have their pen and their paper ready to take notes, and they were expecting, when the topic was women in literature, they were expecting exactly what you would expect from a bloated male teacher. And they didn't get that. Instead, they got a blast of truth. An amazing blast of truth. The last thing in the world the women in that audience were expecting someone writing about women in literature to say would be that in order to write, a woman needs money of her own and a room of her own. That was the last. They were expecting to hear the inspirations from Mount Helicon, and instead they're hearing grubby realities. A Room of One's Own is incredible to read. It has consumed me probably more than anything else by this author, even though this author wrote far more ambitious things. Then we move on to something, talk about ambitious. Seven Pillars of Wisdom by Lawrence of Arabia. An incredible epic that at least nominally is about the Arab revolt during World War I, but it's not. It's about so much more than that. It is Lawrence both had a propensity for self-mythologizing. and also a hatred of his own propensity for self-mythologizing. And boy, oh boy, does all of that come forward in this book. It's immense, but it's incredible. It's like no other work that exists in the 20th century. Then the Once and Future King by T.H. White, his great Arthurian epic. And here I would include the Book of Merlin, which is a separate book, a small, much smaller book of sort of a codicil to the Once and Future King. I would include both of those things as, at first, a wonderfully knowledgeable, source-knowledgeable study or historical treatment, fictional treatment of the Arthurian cycle and all of its adjacent cycles. But it becomes so much more than that. It becomes such a sad, passionate meditation on the durability of love. Oh, the Once and Future King, if you know it only from The Sword and the Stone, maybe the Disney cartoon, you have no idea what's coming to you in the steadily tightening circles of heartbreak in that book. It is one of, especially if you include the Book of Merlin, it is one of the saddest books that I've ever read. Beautifully, bottomlessly sad, but one of the saddest books that I've ever read. And again, if you only know it from The Sword and the Stone, you're not going to guess that. You're not going to guess that that's even out there. And it has comic bits, at least in the first half. It does, but then in terms of modern here is taking a bit of a stretch here, but Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Herman Melville, who led a conventional writer's life, where you hang on every critical notice and you sponge money off your father-in-law. So that's every writer's life. He led a fairly typical writer's life until he wrote Moby Dick. And that derailed his artistic sensibilities. It certainly derailed his relationship with his reading public. And it derailed the rest of his writing. Some of the writing that he did privately after that was of a piece. Moby Dick, believe it or not, although it has a reputation as being this horrifying novel, it is trying to make itself understood to you. It's just the things it's trying to make understood are savage. They are savage. They are unaccountable even to the author. They are peeking through the pasteboard mask at you. It's trying, though. It's at least trying. And Melville did write other things that were trying to make themselves comprehensible, but a lot of what he wrote after Moby Dick is not, does not, cannot. But Moby Dick itself, yes. Oh my, yes. Then, in terms of consuming me, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, who wrote a more ambitious novel and wrote more sly or more pointed novels, but in my opinion never wrote anything as great as Pride and Prejudice. Certainly, I always feel a little guilty when I say this, but no other novel by her comes anywhere close to the spell it casts on me, which I guess is the whole point of books that consume you, is that the other Jane Austen novels I read and in some cases very much appreciate, there's only one that consumes me, and that's Pride and Prejudice. And then finally, we can end this modern era in terms of well, in any of these things, by consume, I am using a yardstick that Books with Sam was not using in his own video. He will come to use it, I think, but he wasn't using it in his own video. And for me, that yardstick would be the sheer number of times that I've revisited the book. I could include a lot of other things in here, but a lot of them would be revisiting for simple adventure's sake. Whereas the kind of revisiting that I'm talking about here is where you find new depths. Not just that you relive, a particular moment, but that you find new depths. And so the last thing I'll mention here is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is very much that for me. I mean, when I am feeling a little bit out of sorts with the reading that I'm doing, I am as vulnerable as anybody to wanting to go back to Lord of the Rings and just reread certain bits. Anybody can feel that. I feel that. But rereading all of The Lord of the Rings also rewards every time I do it. I have not got to the bottom of that book. And that has included over the years reassessing favorably huge swaths of the book that I did not like the first few times I read them, which is a classic example of that. So I'll finish up the list with that, and that is a list of books that consume me. I don't know. This is not. It's a thematic response to Books with Sam. I wanted to continue the discussion, and I would love to hear from you. the books that consume you. I would love to know that. This list would be much longer if I were including books that I am seeing through a glass darkly. If I'm including books that I'm seeing through the work of other people, editors, translators, cobblers together or whatnot, this list would be longer and have other things on it. But I'm talking about direct consumption here. So feel free to let me know what books consume you. But anyway, I'll leave a link to Sam's video and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.